Because this looks like a hand axe.
It looks a bit like a hand axe. It feels like a hand axe. It is a hand axe, yes it is. And it's the real McCoy, the real thing. It's not a copy or anything. You feel how heavy it is. Made of flint, as you probably know. Do you know flint as a stone? When it chips, it has very, very sharp edges. And to prove that, one thing you could do when you get home is to look up napping flint on YouTube, and there's actually an episode, or a few episodes, showing someone actually making a hand axe out of a lump of flint, chipping it into shape and trimming it off. But above all, it's demonstrated when it's freshly made, these edges are unbelievably sharp. We have a point which could be used as a dagger, like a knife, and these edges are sharp enough to peel a tomato of all things, and to prepare things in the kitchen like a kitchen knife, or to use this as a scraper, or to use this edge for chopping wood. So it's a very, very versatile tool when it's freshly made, with very, very sharp edges. We call it a hand axe because it was made in what we call the Paleolithic age, before people knew about putting handles on things, the Old Stone Age. And in the Old Stone Age, that's all they knew about. That was the highest form of technology. It was something that could be held in the hand that way on, or do that with it, but no handles at all. Handles didn't appear until the New Stone Age, when they sort of got bright enough and clever enough to think, haha, if we put a handle on this, it's going to be much more effective. But they didn't know about that in the Old Stone Age. And do join us if you wish. And we're talking about a date of about 350,000 years ago. The date being obtained because bits of burnt bone and wood were found along with these, and they can be dated using carbon-14 radioactive methods. So it's about 350,000 years old. Made in England. In fact, it comes from a place called Swanscombe in Kent, which isn't far outside southeast London, and made by these people. And you've probably heard of Neanderthal man, these people, and Neanderthals were one of the many types of pre-human creatures, hominids we could call them, which roamed from Spain in the west to the eastern Mediterranean, including southeast England. So made by Neanderthal 350,000 years ago approximately. And there it was, a very versatile tool, a bit like you might say a Swiss Army knife of the day, because it could do so many functions. Also the highest form of technology, so a Neanderthal swaggering around like this is boasting, just like someone today with smartphone 10, look at me, I've got the latest technology. And this was the latest technology 350,000 years ago. It was a huge breakthrough. And these people were sophisticated enough, these creatures or people, they knew how to make fire by friction of wood. And also, interestingly, these hand axes have always been found alongside the skeleton of a Neanderthal who's been buried. This has been buried with him or her, and also buried with the person was a piece of roast meat, like a leg of lamb or something like that, because they've always found burnt animal bones in with the skeleton. Strange. Well, this tells straight away that even in that age, so very long ago, there was an instinct which said that when someone dies, that's not the end of everything. That person's going on somewhere. They might be stiff and cold, but they're going on somewhere, so they must have some food, and he ought to take his hand axe with him. So all that time ago, there seemed to be the rudiments of some sort of religious beliefs creeping in, all that, which is interesting for these people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's what that's all about, hand axe.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome. Okay, nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Enjoy
nice
the rest
to
of your
meet you.
visit.
Thanks.
Anything else on your...
What about this?
That one. Yes, do yeah. Have a good look, yes. Anything, any of you think, what is that thing, I wonder?
Looks like a piece of architecture.
A piece of architecture, yes, and whereabouts in architecture or a building might you have found a thing like that, do you think? But you're quite right, it's architecture is part of a building, certainly, and what part, I wonder? Well, it wouldn't be a ceiling, that way. In fact, quite simply, it was floor tile. Yes, it was a floor tile, piece of a floor tile. Now, it's interesting, one or two points of view. Having been made in the 12th century, about 900 years ago, by a revolutionary method. And it's something England can be proud of, something invented in England, a way of mass-producing tiles, because no one had mass-produced tiles ever before, with paintings, mosaics, and so on. But this was a way of mass production. If you imagine a piece of soft clay like that, and you've got a pattern maybe on a piece of wood like that, and you simply stamp that into the clay, you're going to get an impression. Well, this was a piece of red clay which was impressed with a pattern of leaves, acorns, etc. Impressed, and then a wash of white clay was wiped across there, and white clay goes into all the impressed areas, you understand, and instantly you've got your nice pretty picture of white acorn and leaves on a red background, just like as quick as that. So this can then be dried and fired, and you can get on to the next one. So do you see, we've now discovered a very quick way of making quite nice decorative tiles, and that was an absolute breakthrough. You and I would call it mass production, we're quite familiar with that, but it was totally unheard of until the 12th century, when this process was invented in the Midlands in England. So that's one part of it. Now the other part of this story is that a batch of these tiles were made for a monastery called Hales Abbey, which is in Gloucestershire. And so this tile would have been witness to about 400 peaceful, happy years of monastic life, with monks running around on here doing what else monks do on tiles, for about 400 years, until Christmas Eve 1539, when the place was raided. A lot of monks fled. Those that didn't were killed. All the gold and silver was stolen from the monastery. Even the lead off the roof was stolen and melted down, and then the whole establishment was burnt to the ground. Question is why? Well, that chapter in English history, some of you may or may not know, when England, being a Roman Catholic country like the rest of Europe, or Britain like the rest of Europe, ruled by King Henry VIII, who had a quarrel with the Pope, and he decided then that he wanted to break away from the Church of Rome, found the Church of England, saying, I shall be the head of the church, and that to the Pope, kind of thing. And that was that, a break from Rome, foundation of the Church of England. And part of the process was he wanted to get rid of all these horrible Roman Catholic establishments, like monasteries, priories, abbeys, nunneries, and so on, up and down the land. So he sent his commissioners all over England, Wales, and Scotland to steal anything that's worth stealing, dispose of the monks whatever way, and burn all these places to the ground. And that's why all over our country we've got ruins. Oh, once upon a time, the most magnificent religious buildings burnt to the ground. So it's seen a bit of history, that's all I'm saying, that little tile. I like to think about such things. It's a good idea, that's quite good. And on the other side is George III. And struck in his reign to commemorate the foundation of something called the Royal Society of the Promulgation of Arts and Commerce. What was that? Well, George III was so shocked that the average person in the country, like about 95% of people in the country, were really ignorant about just about everything. You know, the average person living here in London wouldn't realise that the big mass of land across there was a place called Europe. They would never have heard of Europe.
Okay.
And so he's actually horrified, you know, about the level of ignorance. And really it was a method, it was called the Royal Society of the Promulgation of Arts and Commerce. We're just looking at this commemorative medallion struck in 1760 to commemorate George III's foundation of this organisation, whereby ordinary members of the public could hear free lectures and presentations on all kinds of things, from history, geography, art, mathematics, just so that people could have their eyes opened. Probably the lower classes didn't bother, but certainly the middle classes could suddenly begin to realise that there was history and understand mathematics, because until then people were either didn't, the 95% of the population didn't go to school, no internet, nothing, so people were just terribly ignorant, and George III was very concerned about it. And another thing about George III was his books. He had a huge library of books, tens of thousands of books. And as his death approached in 1820, Parliament said, well, look, we'll sell your books and make money for the government. And George III said, no, certainly not. My books must be kept together as a collection. They must be somewhere where they're available to the public, so you and I can go in and refer to my books and learn stuff from my books. And so, as this museum was being built at the time, this room was scheduled to be the King's Library, and that's why this room we're in now is the most decorative room in the whole museum, with marble pillars and an exotic ceiling and so on. And the King's books were here until about 20 years ago. And the King's books have now been moved, because we've now got something called the British Library, you might have heard of, and that's where the King's books are, still together as a collection and still available to you and me by appointment to go look at them if we want to. So it's very concerned about the well-being, well-being of the people in this country. And another offshoot of that was that at the time Parliament passed an act to say that never ever should a charge be made for people to come and look at the public collections, and that's why everyone comes in here free today. So the belief was that even the poorest person should be able to walk in here for nothing and be exposed to beautiful things and perhaps learn something. So the museum will always be free.
That's
Do
great.
you want him to thank for that?